Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, OnScreen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to OnScreen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
Before we get to anything, I'm just going to let everybody know that I have a sinus infection, so if my voice sounds a little off at some point during the podcast, that's probably why. But today's podcast, we are going to be talking about the Kingsman franchise. So, there's 3 movies. There's 2 that are kind of like directs, and then there's like another one that's kind of a prequel. And so we're going to talk about all of those movies. We also have some stuff coming up in the news that we're going to talk about, Nintendo's financials, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 box office, a few trailers, and that's going to be it for this week's podcast. So let's get started with our On Beat segment. On Beat. On Beat is, of course, our news segment, and we have some financial news, some box office news, and some trailers to discuss. So we're going to kick things off with Nintendo's financials. Any of the numbers we're talking about here are through March. So the financials, it's always like stuff that's been tabulated and put aside in like at the end of March. And, they're not all up to date. For example, we're going to mention Metroid Prime Remastered numbers, and those are basically 1 month or less of sales on that. So, first off, the big news of the financials is that software sales for the Switch have hit over 1 billion. So,
yeah,
that's
which
crazy.
Is pretty good. Yeah, that's
that
crazy.
Means an almost 10 to 1 attach ratio.
Nice.
Something like a 8 to 1 or 9 to 1 attach ratio. Switch hardware is now at 125.62 million. Last time we did Nintendo's financials, they'd taken 3rd place for video game systems of all time. They're still in 3rd place. There's no real change there. I doubt they're ever going to reach the numbers that DS and PS2 have.
Yeah, Switch might end its run in 3rd place. I mean, the gap is so large that, yeah, it wasn't going to be 2nd place by this financial.
Yeah, I mean, for the record, Switch is right now at 125.62. That's of March numbers. DS is at 154 million, and PS2 is at 155 million. So
yes.
We're talking like about 30 million units difference.
Yeah. And
probably not going to happen.
and they forecasted a goal for this year of 15 million additional units sold, but Furukawa admitted that forecast is a stretch. He admitted during the financial that Switch sales have slowed and that Nintendo was disappointed in the holiday sales for the Switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be slowing down. They're not too far off target, all things considered. Like,
right.
If you look at like a lot of like financial reports for companies, this is one of the ones that's pretty close to what they predicted. We also, again, this is March, so this doesn't account for any of the pre-orders or sales of like the Zelda Tears of the Kingdom OLED Switch. You know, like none of that's counted in here. Software sales also over 1 billion does not include purchases of Tears of the Kingdom, you know, which is a huge game that's about to drop in any moment now. Hardware sales are on decline for the Switch. They said that now they're expecting them to continue on decline. They didn't make any prediction that it was going to pick up. It sounds like they're kind of positioning themselves verbally for the Switch successor. We have a few things about specific video games, newer ones, basically. There's everything, all the big games that are continuing to sell big numbers have gotten updates, but it's kind of not really worth pointing out, you know, that Mario Kart 8 had like another 1 million units, or it's not putting it over any new record or anything. But some of the newer games that have come out since the last financial report that are worth mentioning, Fire Emblem Engage has sold 1.61 million. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is 1.46 million. Metroid Prime Remastered is at 1.09 million. And Lastly, releases after Tears of the Kingdom. They always put out, when they do their financial report, like a list of upcoming games and stuff. It's pretty slim. Basically, the only full game that Nintendo has coming out for the rest of the year is Pikmin 4. Besides that, they have some Pokemon DLC and 2 more waves of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC, and that's it. That's all they have on the record.
Yes.
I can't imagine they might have like a few more things, but probably nothing big coming out for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Nintendo's, their investor Q&A, they said there are no plans to drop the price of the Switch this year, and they plan to stretch the sales of the Switch this holiday. Nintendo said they will talk about next-gen hardware when they are ready, and they are always thinking about new and interesting ideas. Regarding next-gen, Nintendo said transitioning the Switch's user base to a new Nintendo console will be an important issue for them going forward. But for now, they are prioritizing and maintaining and growing the current Switch audience.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they said. Again, not a lot was said about, like, next-gen hardware. They mostly refused to talk about it. Funny enough,
well, you don't want to talk about it because you still want to sell Switches this year.
Funny enough, unlike previous financials, there's no outright denial, this time.
I think they did say that it wasn't coming this fiscal year.
They did not say that.
I thought I saw something.
That is erroneous. No, they did not. So that report came from Nikkei. Nikkei cited a source close to Nintendo that told them that. Nintendo never stated that. The only thing Furukawa said at the financials regarding that is that the financial forecast for next fiscal year does not include new hardware.
Yeah.
So any sales, any financial money they make from releasing new hardware within the next fiscal year is not included in these forecasts. They basically said the forecast is for their current gen hardware.
Mm-hmm. Well, that pretty much is them saying it's not coming this year.
Yeah, but it's not it's not a hard denial.
Yeah, it's not a hard denial, but
it's not a hard denial. It's just like saying like they can, but like the numbers they're giving out is not going to include that, does not include that if they will, because they're in a position where, like you said, they don't want to confirm new hardware is coming out
yeah, because that'll slow down their current hardware sales.
Yes, it's not something they want to do. So Nikkei is reporting from a source. A source told them that it's no new hardware is coming this fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's not from Nintendo's statements, but from a source.
Yes. To be honest, I'm not surprised either way. I've always maintained new hardware 2024. It doesn't have to come out in March. It will come out in 2024. I am 99.9% positive of that. There's like that 0.1% chance that we'll go through 2024. I don't think Nintendo can actually afford to do that at this point. Switch sales are slowing down. It even looks like the output's starting to slow down, like we just mentioned.
Yeah.
They only have Pikmin 4 coming out and some DLC for Pokemon on the horizon after Zelda.
It started becoming apparent to me that 2023 was the last year of the Switch, when like every game, we just started getting so many DLC announcements, and they all had like various length roadmaps as they were announced that all were ending at the end of 2023. So I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing. It became pretty obvious. Like, this is what Nintendo's doing. They're flushing out, they're squeezing out the last couple drops they can for this year so that they can get ready for next year for a fresh start, you know? And they keep saying, you know, TBD for Metroid Prime 4. To me, that's for a long time now has meant, you know, Switch successor for Metroid Prime 4, you know? It's just, it seems pretty obvious, but, you know, it's Nintendo. The more obvious something seems, the more it can, like, hit you like a left hook.
There's rumors that Nintendo is not going to have any show or any Nintendo Directs or announcements until Nintendo Live in September, which they already confirmed.
A full Direct. I imagine they'll probably do something for Pikmin 4, if nothing else, like some trailer drops.
I mean a full Direct, not marketing for, like, an announced game that's coming out,
Yeah, they'll just do like they've done for the Mario Kart 8 DLC tracks where like they'll just drop a trailer. Yeah. It'll just be shit like that, I think. You know, if there is a Direct, it'll be like a Pikmin 4 exclusive Direct, I imagine. Like, you know, a game-specific Direct. Or maybe like what do they call them? Their Indie World, something like that, you know? But like, I seriously doubt we're gonna get a Nintendo Direct for quite a while, like a real Nintendo Direct for quite a while. Like, I even think September might be too early for what I'm expecting for like a real Nintendo Direct, because I don't think Nintendo's going to be talking about their next year plans in September, you know?
No.
I don't know if we're going to get some this year at all. I can imagine them like straight up coming out like early next year with it. You know, the Switch, when they announced the Switch, they dropped a teaser trailer the year before.
If development has truly shifted full force to the next generation console, then yeah, they're not going to have much this holiday season.
Yeah, I don't even think they need to do like what they did with the Switch with the concept trailer, because it all seems like the Switch successor is going to be a Switch successor and not like, you know, a radically new concept. And if that's the case, they don't really need a teaser to show off what the device is.
Like, and I've mentioned this before, especially because Furukawa seems to be like a very conservative type of guy, and he mentioned again, that a big point, you know, anxiety for him and Nintendo is like maintaining the Switch's user base and not having another Wii U. I think it's going to be very conservative going from the Switch to next gen, just because Nintendo is terrified of having another Wii U situation happen to them.
Yeah, we're talking more like NES to SNES.
Yeah.
Than like GameCube to Wii, you know?
Right.
Yeah. That's it for the Nintendo financials, though. The next thing we have in the news, a little movie came out, a little art house flick called Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Came out, it hit the box office, had its first weekend, and it dethroned Mario, which had a 4-week hold on the number 1 position. Mario, by the way, is now at 518 million domestic and 1.15 billion global.
Yeah.
So, it got dethroned, though, by Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which in this weekend took 118 million domestic opening weekend, which is second for the year to Mario, which did 146 million this year. So it's the second biggest opening of the year behind Mario.
That's crazy how big that gap is.
Yeah, it's pretty big. And the first Guardians of the Galaxy, for record, the very first Guardians of the Galaxy movie did 94 million in its opening weekend. So it's a little bit more than that.
Nice. That's good news.
Internationally, Guardians of the Galaxy did 170 million. Globally, that's international and domestic combined, it did 289 million in its opening weekend. So it's well positioned. It's not anything absolutely crazy. These aren't endgame numbers. These aren't Spider-Man No Way Home numbers, but this are still like really solid numbers for Guardians. And Guardians is also getting a lot of positive word of mouth, which means that it should have a longer staying strength than, say, like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania did, which kind of dropped off pretty quickly. Also, it's worth pointing out, as I mentioned about word of mouth, that on Rotten Tomatoes, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is now sitting at 82% critical and 95% for the audience. So that's, again, like I said, word of mouth, audience. You're going to see some growth, I think. It's going to continue to be bringing in some money for the next couple of weeks. And there's only really one huge movie still coming out in May, which is the next Fast and the Furious movie. So they got a pretty open field, I think. April was pretty busy, but May's a little slow.
Right, yeah.
And then the last thing, while I was bringing up all those box office numbers, I wanted to point out Evil Dead Rise is now at 54 million domestic and 110 million global. That doesn't sound like a lot, but remember, Evil Dead Rise has had a budget of 15 million. So it's already like way surpassed its budget, you know? And it was originally supposed to be an HBO Max exclusive, and then it was turned into a theatrical release from there after it had already been filmed. That's pretty good for Evil Dead Rise. Just pointing that out because I'm a big Evil Dead fan, so.
And in other news, Game Freak, the developers of Pokemon, announced a new game with private division for next-gen consoles called Project Bloom, which is set to be an action-adventure game.
So if it's like a typical Game Freak game, it'll be on next-gen hardware, but it will have the visuals of last-gen hardware.
Yeah. Hopefully not. I mean, the concept art looked really cool. But yeah, Private Division, which is owned by Take-Two Publishing, is publishing this game, and Game Freak's developing.
And then lastly for our news, we have some trailers to talk about. To start off, we got the new trailer for Oppenheimer. The big thing that's being talked about with this movie, and I think we saw just a little tiny piece of it, is the recreation of the nuclear blast, which was supposed to be a really big deal in this movie, like how accurate it looks and stuff. We got to see a little smidgen of it in the periphery.
Yes.
And it's looking pretty exciting.
Oh,
we also got to see
100%.
Einstein.
Yes. Yeah, we got to see Einstein. So, I mean, it looks good. Obviously, it's one of the big Oscar contenders for the year, right? This is going to be an Oscar movie. It looks fantastic, though.
Yeah, it's Nolan. He puts out movies, every couple years, and they're all big deal releases. And this is his next. And then lastly, we had a trailer for Meg 2, The Trench. This is a sequel to a movie that neither of us have seen, that I don't think either of us have any interest in seeing, but they did the right thing for the sequel that they failed to do with the original, which is they said, let's make a big monster movie for the original. And then they seemingly had no sense of humor in how they approached that. They didn't make it fun at all. They just kind of approached it like as a serious movie. Right, the trailer for the second movie is like the opposite approach. It's like, we're making a big monster movie. Let's make it a big fucking monster movie. Let's have fun. Let's do like weird stuff. Let's have some funny looking deaths. Let's have some crazy, stuff that's just completely unrealistic but fun as hell. And that's what this trailer presented. So now I'm kind of like, should I watch Meg 2? And then that's making me think, should I watch Meg 1? And then I'm like, no, I shouldn't watch Meg 1. Right, I should watch Meg 2.
Like I said, yeah, it's like Cocaine Bear. Like I said before the podcast, it just looks like a more sophisticated sci-fi disaster movie. Which, it looks like
a Sharknado movie on a bigger budget with better comedic timing.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what it should be. So that is it for our news segment. And now we're moving on to our extra long full spoiler segment where we're talking about 3 movies: Kingsman: The Secret Service, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and The Kingsman.
Yes. Which confused me greatly because I was looking for a movie called Kingsman 3.
So, first thing to talk about just in the franchise in general is that this is an espionage franchise, kind of in the vein of like a James Bond. Around when this started getting made, stuff was starting to shift from James Bond to more like Bourne Identity style, like getting more like gritty and realistic, less about gadgets and stuff like that.
Yeah, this
kind of goes back to gadgets and stuff like that. But where like James Bond would be a little bit zany with the gadgets and the cars and all that kind of stuff, everything else was a bit more grounded. And Kingsman just said, fuck that.
Yeah, this is completely heightened reality.
And instantly this made this my espionage franchise of choice. I never really got that into James Bond. Got a little bit into Bourne, but never too much. This is exactly what I want from a spy movie. And I absolutely remember when I first watched The Secret Service, just completely falling in love with it, thinking it was like awesome. It was amazing. The fight scenes in it were incredible. The characterization was great. I like that they handled like actual like real social commentary in it about like class structures and stuff that you just would never see in a James Bond because everybody in James Bond is like upper crust.
Right, yeah.
You got to kind of see like a whole different approach. I love the school dynamic. This is coming, as I've said on this podcast before, I was a big Harry Potter fan.
Oh yeah,
the idea of like a school of some sort. And it's not really a school, it's like a trial for a program. But it's got that same feeling to it of like training or that kind of like learning about this kind of world in that way.
Which, by the way, we only see in like this first movie.
Yeah, it's only in the first movie, but like all of that really spoke to me. And then on top of that, you had Samuel L. Jackson and the way he played his character with that lisp. And it's just great. Everything about this movie was fantastic. I loved it from beginning to end. The church fight was amazing. That like one take church fight.
Oh god, yeah, that's the highlight of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. With,
it was so good.
Like Freebird playing.
Like the character of Gazelle, who is like Samuel Jackson's like second in command with the artificial legs that are blades. Yeah,
the blade legs. Yeah,
so good. Just the way the movie was like horny too, like the way it ended with like the like anal sex scene or whatever.
Oh yeah.
It's just like so like it's just like an added touch of like crude that like just made it like separated itself from something like a James Bond, that just made it so good. Yeah, I loved all of it. And then we go from that to into the Golden Circle, and they immediately kill off all these characters I love.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, what the fuck? Yeah, exactly. Everybody dies, except for, like, they bring Colin Firth back, you know, like, who's supposedly, like, killed off in the middle of the first movie, in a shock scene where Samuel Jackson, like, shoots him, like, dead in the eye. Like, they kind of explain it, like, the explanation's kind of bullshit. Like, in the sequel, like, they have the Kingsman, but they introduce, like, a new American organization, the Statesmen, which is real fun, and, like, it's explained, like, they have Colin Firth's character, and he's still alive because right after he was shot, they rushed in and saved him. And it's like, okay, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of bullshit, but they're not going for realism, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, exactly. Like, they're not going for realism, so you can buy it, you know?
I can't believe they did Roxy dirty like that, though.
Oh, I know. I was
and
like,
JB.
what the hell? JB, that was bad. I thought, like, maybe, like, there was a chance Roxy escaped or something, but she never came back, and I think as the movie went on, it became more and more obvious that, no, she's dead.
I mean, who knows? Maybe in the third movie they'll bring her back in some weird way, the way they did Charlie, who came back in this movie after we thought he was dead from the first one as well, as a villain. Well, he was kind of a villain in the first movie, kind of. And then they kind of went full villain with him in the second movie. But yeah, part of me was like, oh, I really would have liked to see Roxy and all this stuff going on. I'd really like JD to still be around and stuff. It's like, I kind of missed all of that. But we did get to see that he's actually Eggsy has continued on his relationship with the Princess of Sweden, which is really cool. We got to be introduced to, as you mentioned, the Statesmen, which it's really cool because they're, like the Kingsmen are like Knights of the Round Table. There's like Merlin and Arthur and Lancelot and all these different positions. So it's kind of like the way that Kingsman is like that, Statesmen are all named after alcohols.
Yeah, because they sell whiskey.
Yeah.
Like their front is whiskey. Like Kingsman's front is like a tailor shop, and their front is like they're the biggest distributor of whiskey or something.
Yeah, and it's like the first one we meet is Tequila, played by Channing Tatum. Then we meet the character of whiskey, played by Pedro Pascal.
I know, I was surprised. I was like, wait, Pedro Pascal is in this? That's crazy. Yeah.
And this is like right around when his blow up started happening, because he did Game of Thrones, and then he did Narcos. Yeah, and he was kind of blowing up because of Game of Thrones, but that really hadn't picked up steam when he was doing Narcos. And then the first big role where people were like, oh, Pedro Pascal was this, Kingsman the Golden Circle, and then now he's just completely exploded out of control with his fame, you know, but like, this is right around when it started really booming for him. We got Champagne, which we didn't have enough of, I think, played by Jeff Bridges.
Yes, Jeff Bridges was great. Channing Tatum as Tequila, that was kind of like a glorified cameo, because he's taken out of the movie pretty early. Literally put on ice for the duration of the film, like after he's like introduced.
We did get a long cool fight scene and stuff with him.
Yeah, we did get a cool fight. Julianne Moore plays an absolutely like whacked out like super villain in this.
Yeah, Poppy Adams, yeah.
Yeah.
She's crazy.
Like hiding out in like the middle of the Cambodian jungle, but she's got like all decked out like in 1950s, like fucking.
It's like, like pop art style and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the last member, I should say, of the Statesman that we meet is Ginger, played by Halle Berry. Yeah. Another
Halle Berry, Ginger Ale, yeah.
So that was like really cool. And then
Elton John. Elton John, Poppy's like prisoner. He's great in this too.
Yeah, he's very vulgar. It's funny because this is where Elton John met Taron Egerton, who plays Eggsy. And Taron Egerton went on to play Elton John in Elton John's biopic. And that was because of them meeting here. Like, that didn't happen individually. It was because Elton John met him and really liked him and, you know, recommended him for the role to play him.
Nice.
In Rocket Man. So that's how Taron Egerton got that role. So that's just like a cool aside.
And then Taron Egerton most recently portrayed Hank Rogers in the adaptation of the Tetris story.
Yeah.
So
Taron Egerton moving on up in the world since his Kingsman days. But yeah, Kingsman Golden Circle was great. I really liked Pedro Pascal's character.
It was like,
and the villain turn was really interesting.
Yeah,
because it wasn't a betrayal in the same way. It was like, he wasn't like aligned with the villain of the movie. He was aligned through his beliefs, but not through like actually working with them, you know?
No, yeah.
Like, he had a reason to feel that way, and it wasn't like he was recruited or or something, or like he was a double agent. He just, once it became clear what she was trying to achieve, he related to it.
Yeah, he agreed with it because he had a grievance with drug addicts because of like a really terrible thing that happened to him. It was believable, yeah. It wasn't like one of those crazy things. And he was great in the role as like the real main antagonist of the film.
Yeah.
So, because that was the swerve. It's like Poppy was not the film's real antagonist. She was the one obviously driving the plot forward and like, you know, doing all the bad shit. But
it was her scheme and her plan and everything, but the big fight at the end wasn't with her.
No, yeah. It was with Whiskey, and it was fantastic. Like I said, Pedro Pascal is awesome in this movie.
All the stuff they did with the whip was really cool.
This movie is like way more bonkers than even the first movie.
Yeah, it went crazy. The meat grinder, all the uses of that were really cool. The robot dogs, I loved it when Elton John like swung in front of it.
Yes.
I also loved that did you get the like reference to the anal sex joke from the first movie when Harry saved Elton John? And he said like, he's, oh, sorry, I have to save the world. And Elton said, well, if you save the world, I'll get you backstage passes.
Yeah, I caught that. Yeah.
I thought that was a clever way of doing that. That was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the movie, I dug it all. I liked the way they made the President of the United States just fucking horrible. Very Nixon-esque. He's like, well, I don't care if a bunch of drug addicts die. Why do I give a shit? You know? Let's just let them all die. We'll be better off for it and stuff. It's like, Jesus Christ. I liked the way all of that went down. It was cool. I liked the way they brought Harry back. I liked the visual effect of all the butterflies coming off the wall when Eggsy brought in like a dog that looked a lot like his old dog and used that as a way to kind of try to get him to access his memories. All of that was really cool. And it was big and over the top like it should have been. And, it left me so excited for a third Kingsman movie. And then we got our third Kingsman movie. And it was very different. Instead of Kingsman 3, instead of a continuation of that story, we got a, kind of a spin-off, like a prequel spin-off, starring, Ralph Fiennes as the lead character, and it's the origins of Kingsman, like where it came from, and it's a World War I era espionage.
And man, like the tonal whiplash between like the Golden Circle and this is insane, because this is much more like restrained. I mean, there's still like bonkers shit in it.
There's credit you gotta give to Matthew Vaughn as the director of this, because he directed all of them, including this one.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was able to have such a different style for the third movie, and yet still kind of like fit in at the same time. Like there were still crazy fights that were really like over the top and crazy and stuff.
Yeah,
but they were completely different.
You got these big dramatic moments too.
Yeah, but even the fights, like they were big and crazy, but they were big and crazy in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So it's like he really was able to kind of carve out like its own identity for this movie aside from the other ones while still feeling connected, which I think that's kind of what made it impressive to me. I was a little disappointed with this movie. I was really excited when it was coming out and trailers started coming out for it. But I think when I actually watched the movie, a lot of it's pretty slow compared to the other ones. It just doesn't move as fast. And, you know, of course, you don't have the characters that you're already attached to from the first two. So that it makes it a little harder as well. But there were like two fight scenes in particular in this movie that just blew me away, that I absolutely adored. And one relates to a character too, which is the MVP of this movie is Rasputin, played by, Rhys Ifans, who is also in House of the Dragon. He plays the Hand of the King, of House Hightower.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and he completely stole the movie, in my opinion.
Yes.
He was so weird. He was so, I mean, exactly as he should be. Rasputin is a really weird figure in history, you know?
And you could tell, like, they had a lot of fun with including Rasputin in the story.
Yeah.
Like, you could tell just from, like, the performance and how much screen time he actually got, like how long that fight lasts.
Yeah, even before the fight, all the stuff with the dinner and the weird thing with like Orlando's leg, where like he was like healing his leg and all that. There's like so much weird stuff going on.
They did not want to say goodbye to this character.
He really should have been the main villain of the movie.
Yes, he should have been. Yeah.
He was fantastic. The whole fight scene was crazy. The way he just would not die is very like true to history or historical account. Maybe not not true history of
Right,
Rasputin. That's been a long mythologized aspect of Rasputin's life, that when they killed him, they just kept doing things to kill him and nothing was working.
Right,
They stabbed him, they tried to drown him, like none of it worked, you know? And it was just all leading up to this big mythological presence of Rasputin, which ended up, you know, the last big piece is that apparently his penis is absolutely massive and on display in some museum. But apparently that's
insane.
all false. But this is just the craziness of Rasputin. If you want to have a crazy time looking through history, look up Rasputin. But yeah, they did him justice. They did Rasputin great. I think the actor did an amazing job playing Rasputin. I think that dance fight scene was incredible. And then the other scene that I really loved was, with the son, Conrad, that's, Orlando's son, when he died, or like right before he died, I guess, the fight scene where they were in the trenches and neither of the sides wanted to use guns because all sides would open fire.
No, that was great. Yeah, that was like the big dramatic part of the movie. That was like a bit on Kingsman because like it was very serious. Like it was a good scene, but it morphed into like a war movie.
Yeah,
and
that whole
that's
part
like,
of the movie,
that
whole
section
movie was like, yeah, it's like, are we watching 1917 here? Like,
that was the biggest part, that like total whiplash, because there's nothing like that in either of the previous two movies.
Yeah, none of the other two movies are very James Bondy. They're very like, there's some big figure trying to make money through some scheme or something, or trying to enact some type of scheme. And that makes it very James Bond like, and this is like, no, this is war, and espionage is going on in the background of this war, you know?
So basically, what this movie proposes is that that the villain of this film is responsible for orchestrating all the chaos of the early 20th century, you know, like that went down.
Yeah, they did a good job throwing us off the scent of who it was.
Yes.
Because this is a character that we had seen in a different role in the movie at several points.
I knew it was going to be somebody that was, because
they kept him in shadow, yeah.
Yeah, they never showed him. Like, unlike the previous two villains, which they never had a problem with.
It was a little Dr. Claw for me, that the way they were showing his face.
Yeah, it made it obvious. But yeah. They were going for like some twist.
Mm-hmm. But they did a good job on what the twist was. Like I didn't see that it was going to be him at any point. He just seemed too insignificant into the whole thing. And then they present him as like, oh no, he's the big bad. So that was impressive. But as I said, they should have probably led with Rasputin as the main villain, because he was the one that was really charismatic and crazy and like more interesting. The whole fight scene with him was much more interesting. Like I think if they had led with it being Rasputin being the big bad, I think it might have been a little bit better.
Yeah, the main villain of this was actually kind of boring, in my opinion.
Yeah, kind of milquetoast.
Yeah.
Like I said, they did a good job surprising us with who it was, but they didn't necessarily do a good job of making him a compelling villain in his own right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it for The King's Man. I still enjoyed the movie a lot. It's a little bit slower, or a lot slower than the other Kingsman movies.
Pace. Yeah, exactly.
And it was a little disappointment compared to the other ones. Like I said, there were two really good action scenes. There are a few good dramatic scenes as well that were really good. It's a beautifully shot movie, and every way that's good. But like overall, I don't think the first
half
two
of The
movies
King's Man
quickly.
is like Ray Fiennes like arguing like with his son about not wanting him to fight. That's like almost like every other scene for most of the movie up until like his son actually dies.
Yeah. It moves a little bit slow. I mean, it's still good.
The previous two movies just kind of like just pop off and like they don't stop.
They're so fun and fast.
Yes.
This one had its moments, but, and I have to give, like I said, I have to give credit to the director who did all three movies for the way he was able to differentiate the prequel from the other movies. I think that's important to do. And I think he did a good job of that, but it wasn't as good, you know, as the other movies, like clearly. That's it for The King's Man, but before we exit talking about the franchise, I also wanted to point out that there are other things in the works for Kingsman. It's not over. So I'd heard that there was another movie in development, but what I figured was that they were continuing on with the most recent one, The King's Man, which had a post-credit scene that involved like Hitler and stuff, setting up events for World War II. So I'm like, oh, okay, so they're going to follow up with that. But apparently at the same time that they were doing The King's Man, they were also working on a sequel to the first two movies, a direct sequel with Eggsy and Harry, called Kingsman: The Blue Blood. This movie was announced all the way back in 2017. As I said, it's a direct follow-up to Golden Circle with those two lead characters that we know and love. And it just got delayed with pandemic and everything, got put on hold. But the only real kind of information I have about it is that it's supposed to kind of wrap up that storyline of Kingsman with Eggsy and Harry. It's like the conclusion to that story. And that they were trying to get The Rock as the main villain. And so that's kind of all I really know about it.
Yeah, who knows if that's, like, what's happening with that. Like I said, like you said, they announced that all the way back in 2017. A lot has happened since then.
Yeah, it was 2017
haven't heard
when they announced they were developing
anything about a new Kingsman in the intervening years. So, like, who knows if that's even still a thing, or if that's happening, or if it's even, like, happening in, like, that same form.
Their plans got delayed. They were working on that and the Kingsman at the same time. Like, they were developing them at the same time, not filming them at the same time. And the Kingsman just came together much faster, I think. Probably because they were trying to get The Rock, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I imagine that's probably what held up or held up Blue Blood over the Kingsman. And then they were able to do Kingsman, so they put that into production. And then right as that movie was about to come out, the pandemic hit, lockdown hit, everything slowed down. So we haven't heard anything really about that since. But this was in active development. It was never officially canceled. So I'm hoping we'll get more from that.
Now there's a writer's strike, so who knows?
Yeah. There was another project, though, also in development, that we've also haven't heard anything about since. This one was announced in 2018, and this is a TV series that follows the Statesman, and was going to see the return of Channing Tatum, Jeff Bridges, and Halle Berry.
Halle Berry, yeah.
Halle Berry. I brain farted on that.
Happens to the best of us. That would be interesting, especially since, like, I mentioned Channing Tatum didn't get a lot of screen time in this movie. So
I think he would be pretty much the lead of that TV series.
Yeah.
Jeff Bridges also didn't get as much screen time as he should have. So I'd like, just for that alone, more champagne. We barely got him. We had a few cool scenes with him and then almost nothing else.
It was basically Pedro Pascal, which, I mean, I don't blame them. Pedro Pascal, again, is fantastic. And he was fantastic in that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but those are two other projects. I am hoping that they come to fruition because I love Kingsman. Kingsman is my James Bond. When everybody talks about, like, who's your James Bond? Is it Connery? Is it Moore? I'm like, it's Eggsy.
Yeah.
Eggsy is my James Bond. Kingsman is my James Bond. I don't care about James Bond. I don't care about Jason Bourne. I care about Eggsy and Harry.
Yes. Yeah. Because, like, they're super fun movies.
Yeah. That is it for our full spoiler segment. And all we have left to do is wrap up the show. So next week, I'm not exactly sure completely what we're going to talk about. There is one thing that we're going to be for sure talking about next week. I just don't know how much we're going to be talking about it. And that is because in just a matter of days, a certain game is coming out. And that is The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes.
So that means next week we're going to be talking a little bit about our experiences, but because it's such an open world game and you can go in so many different places, I'm not exactly sure how that conversation's going to go, how much of it we're going to have, if we're going to bring up other topics in the podcast as well. But that's kind of our main thing that we know we're going to be talking about next week. We just don't know how much. So look forward to that. If you're going to be playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, then you can play along with us and hear us chat a little bit about our experiences with the game next week on the podcast. But that is it for our podcast. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at FoxAHero. You can check out our Facebook page, our personal Twitter accounts that I just named, our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you open up one of the container stories to any of the podcasts that we have on our website, you will find links to all of the relevant accounts, to our RSS feed, our SoundCloud page, all of that's there. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.